I arrived for the holiday dinner, and my sister-in-law pushed the door halfway shut, shouting, "Get out!" I stood there confused, until my brother's boss walked up behind me and said, "Tell them the truth." Her face changed instantly. Nandi Kalala, a 31-year-old financial analyst from Mombasa, didn't expect a call from her sister-in-law, Thalani. They weren't close, and holiday dinners were usually awkward. So when Thalani suddenly invited her this year, the words felt too sweet, almost rehearsed. Even more strange was Saifo's voice in the background, tight, nervous, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. Still, when he softly added, "Just come, it'll be good," Nandi hoped maybe, just maybe, this was their chance to fix things. She spent the afternoon choosing something simple yet classy. A soft cream dress, small earrings, and her favorite scarf that her late father had gifted her. She even carried a handmade present, an embroidered table runner she'd stitched herself, wanting to bring something thoughtful, something that showed she was trying. But the whole ride to Durban felt wrong. Nandi couldn't shake the heavy feeling in her stomach. It wasn't fear, just that quiet warning your heart gives before something painful. The streets were bright with holiday lights, families laughing on the sidewalk, but her mind kept drifting back to Saifo's strange silence, to the way he didn't sound like himself. She replayed the invitation again and again, wondering if she had misunderstood something, or if something was being hidden from her. As the car turned into her brother's upscale neighborhood, she took a deep breath and told herself she was overthinking. Maybe it really would be a fresh start. Maybe this time, her family actually wanted her there. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Nandi, something isn't right." Nandi stood at the entrance of Saifo and Thalani's grand home, still holding the gift she brought, her heart beating a little faster. The place looked even more expensive than she remembered. Soft lights wrapped around the pillars, music drifting out, guests laughing inside. She tried to smile, reminding herself she came with good intentions. She knocked gently, but before she could adjust her scarf, the door swung open so fast it startled her. And there stood Thalani, perfect makeup, glittering dress, and a sharp smirk that instantly made Nandi's stomach twist. The smirk widened. "Get out!" Thalani shouted, loud enough for half the street to hear. "You're not welcome here." For a moment, Nandi didn't move. She just stood frozen on the doorstep, her hand still stretched out with the gift. Her mind couldn't process what was happening. She had imagined many outcomes for this dinner. Awkwardness, coldness, maybe even reconciliation, but not this. Inside the house, conversation stopped. Chairs scraped. Several guests turned to stare. Their surprised, confused eyes landed on her like spotlight. Nandi felt her cheeks burn. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "Thalani, I was invited." "Oh, please," Thalani snapped, rolling her eyes dramatically. "Don't act clueless. You've been using this family for years. Tonight, we're done with you." Nandi took a step back, her breathing shaky. Before she could defend herself, her eyes searched for Saifo, her big brother, the one she had always protected. He was standing behind Thalani, silent, frozen, avoiding her eyes like she was a stranger at his door. That hurt more than anything Thalani had said. "Using you," Nandi whispered, her voice cracking. "What are you talking about?" Thalani scoffed loudly, turning so the whole room could hear. "You're a burden, Nandi. Always running to Saifo for help. Always crying about your problem. You think we don't see through your little pity game?" Gasps rippled through the guests. Someone whispered, "That's her sister-in-law?" Another murmured, "Why invite her then?" Nandi felt her throat close. She wasn't a confrontational person. She didn't like scenes, especially not public ones. And this was her worst nightmare. Being shouted at in front of strangers at her own brother's door. All she had ever done was help Saifo. She'd covered his overdue loans, sent money when he and Thalani were struggling, stayed quiet when he asked her not to tell the family. She never asked for anything in return. She never even told anyone she was the one keeping him afloat. But now here she stood, being branded a burden by the very people she had carried. Her fingers tightened around the gift bag. She wanted to disappear, but her feet felt glued to the front step. "Saifo," she said softly, eyes pleading. "Say something." Saifo's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked to Thalani, then to the guests staring, then back to the floor. He said nothing. A cold wave washed over Nandi, humiliation mixed with betrayal so sharp it made her chest ache. She blinked fast as tears threatened, refusing to let them fall. Not here. Not in front of them. She straightened her back, trying to breathe, but the pain sat heavy inside her. She had walked in hoping for family. Instead, she was pushed back out like she was nothing. And the worst part, her brother watched it happen. Nandi stood there, still on the doorstep, feeling the weight of dozens of eyes pressing into her. She could hear the whispers spreading through the room like fast-moving fire. "Isn't that Saifo's sister? Why is she being shouted at? Did she really just get told to leave?" Every whisper made her chest tighten. She felt like she had shrunk into a smaller version of herself, someone who didn't belong, someone who shouldn't have come. Thalani stepped forward, fully blocking the entrance now, arms crossed like a guard keeping out an intruder. Her eyes were sharp and triumphant, like she enjoyed every second of this humiliation. Nandi forced herself to take a breath. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't push back. She just asked softly, though her voice trembled, "Thalani, can you please tell me what I did wrong?" Thalani laughed, a loud, cold, mocking laugh that echoed through the dining room. "What you did wrong," she repeated dramatically. "You showed up. That's what you did wrong." A few guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some looked away, pretending not to watch. Others stared openly, sensing the drama. Nandi swallowed hard and tried again, this time a little firmer, even though her hands were shaking. "I was invited. Saifo asked me to come. I don't understand. Why are you treating me like this?" Thalani rolled her eyes and snapped. "Because you're pathetic, Nandi. Always playing the innocent one. Always pretending like you're so good and so giving. I'm tired of it. Pathetic." The word stung more than Nandi expected. She felt her heart squeeze painfully in her chest, but she still refused to argue in front of strangers. She kept looking at her brother, silently begging him to say something, anything. But Saifo just stood beside his wife, stiff, quiet, and terrified of her. His eyes never truly met Nandi's. He kept looking down like the floor was suddenly the most interesting thing in the world. That silence cut deeper than any insult. Nandi's fingers tightened on her gift bag. She felt the tears building behind her eyes, but she forced them back. She didn't want to cry in front of these people. She had come with love, wanting peace. Now she was being made a public spectacle. She took a small step back, ready to turn around and leave quietly, to escape before her dignity cracked any further. And then she saw him. At the far end of the long dining table, seated among the elegantly dressed guests, was a man she recognized immediately, broad shoulders, silver beard, expensive suit. Someone powerful, someone respected. Mr. Themba Radebe, Saifo's company CEO, her former boss, and the man who knew exactly who she really was. For a moment, Nandi forgot to breathe. Mr. Radebe wasn't watching the drama casually like the others. He was staring directly at her, not with confusion, but with recognition, and shock, and something else she didn't expect. Anger. Not at her, but at what he had just witnessed. In that second, Nandi felt the entire direction of the evening shift, very quietly but very powerfully. She wasn't leaving anymore. Something was about to change. The moment Mr. Themba Radibi's eyes landed on Nandi, the room shifted. She could feel it, the hum of whispered conversations dying down, replaced by an almost electric tension. He stood slowly, deliberately, his tall frame commanding the entire space without even raising his voice. Nandi's heart thumped in her chest, but this time it wasn't fear. It was hope, a flicker of justice she hadn't expected. "I want to know why Saifo's sister is being insulted in my presence." Mr. Radibi's voice was calm, but sharp, cutting through the stunned silence. Every guest froze mid-conversation. Some mouths opened to whisper, then closed again, unsure what to say. Thalani's confident smirk faltered slightly, and even the chatter from the dining table seemed to vanish. Nandi looked at him, stunned. Mr. Radebe was the CEO of the company she had briefly worked at years ago, before her life had taken a detour. Back then, she had built a financial model that saved the company millions, a project she had poured herself into, staying late nights, running calculations until dawn. It had been her moment of quiet triumph, but no one had acknowledged it publicly, not even her own brother. Mr. Radibi's eyes didn't leave Nandi. He scanned the room, then fixed his gaze on Saifo, who was shifting uncomfortably, suddenly aware that the secret he had buried for years might not stay hidden. "Do you have any idea who she is?" Radebe asked, his tone sharper now. "Do you know what she has done?" Saifo opened his mouth, but only managed a weak stammer. I. Thalani, Thalani, sensing the attention turning dangerously close to her, waved her hand as if brushing Nandi off. "I don't know who she is," she said loudly, hoping to dismiss the problem. "Just some friend of the family." Mr. Radebe didn't flinch. Instead, he turned back to Nandi, his expression serious but respectful. "Nandi Kalala, did you ever receive compensation for the work you did here?" Nandi's stomach tightened. She shook her head slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, I didn't. I was told. My brother told me not to submit the invoice." He said, "Family doesn't charge family." The room went dead silent. Guests leaned forward, curiosity and disbelief written across every face. Nandi could feel the weight of their eyes, but now, it wasn't humiliation, it was anticipation. Mr. Radibi's jaw tightened, and he looked back at Saifo with a cold, hard stare. "You submitted her work under your name and received a bonus?" His voice was low, dangerous, and full of disbelief. Saifo's face went pale, and he swallowed hard, unable to answer. Thalani's confident posture collapsed slightly as her smirk disappeared. She suddenly realized this was bigger than a family spat. This was exposure. Nandi stood quietly, heart racing, but dignity intact. For the first time that night, she felt a small surge of strength. The room had changed. The whispers were now different, curious, astonished, waiting for what would happen next. And in that moment, Nandi knew. The tables were finally about to turn. Nandi took a deep breath, steadying herself. All the humiliation, all the years of being overlooked and taken for granted, had led to this moment. She looked directly at Mr. Radabe and nodded slightly before speaking. "I never received any payment for the work I did," she said clearly, her voice firm despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "Sifo asked me not to submit the invoice. He said, 'Family doesn't charge family.' I trusted him. I trusted him with everything." A heavy silence fell over the room. Some guests shifted uncomfortably, others whispered to each other in disbelief. Thalani's confident smirk wavered, but she quickly tried to recover, pretending this was just another dramatic story she could control. Mr. Radibi's face hardened instantly. His calm, authoritative demeanor became sharp, almost icy. He turned slowly to Sifo, his gaze like a spotlight, revealing every weakness. "Is that true, Sifo?" he asked, his voice low but full of authority. "Did you submit her work under your own name?" Sifo swallowed, his face paling as he realized the gravity of the situation. He stammered, trying to form an excuse, but no words came out. The room seemed to shrink around him. The guests, sensing the tension, fell completely silent, waiting for the truth to unfold. Mr. Radibi's voice rang louder this time, filled with disbelief and controlled anger. "Sifo, you took Nandi's work and claimed it as your own. Not only that, but you also collected a 1.4 million rand bonus for it. Is that correct?" The air in the dining room seemed to crack. Gasps echoed from every corner. Some guests covered their mouths. Others leaned forward, eyes wide. Whispers turned into murmurs of shock. Nandi's heart pounded, but she didn't flinch. She had spent years being quiet, helping her brother, believing in family. Now the truth was finally out, and she was done hiding. Thalani's face went pale. The confident smirk she had worn so effortlessly faded entirely. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, realizing there was no clever word she could say to fix this. The power she had wielded over Nandi just moments ago had completely evaporated. Nandi's chest lifted slightly, a surge of quiet vindication filling her. She looked at Sifo, who avoided her gaze completely, and then at the stunned crowd. She had been humiliated in front of dozens, but now the weight of truth had shifted. The room was no longer judging her, it was judging him. Mr. Radabe finally turned back to her, eyes softening slightly but still intense. "Nandi, thank you for trusting us with the truth. You did not deserve this, and we will make it right." Nandi's lips curved into a small, relieved smile. She hadn't needed applause or congratulations. She had needed justice. And now, for the first time that night, it felt like it was coming. And as Thalani sank into her chair, frozen and speechless, Nandi realized that the evening had just begun, but the tables had already started to turn. The room was heavy with tension. After Nandi revealed the truth about the stolen work, Mr. Radabe straightened, his face unreadable for a moment, and then spoke with authority that left everyone frozen. "We will be conducting an immediate internal audit," he announced, his voice echoing in the luxurious dining room. "Everything will be reviewed. All claims, all bonuses, all submissions. We will uncover the full truth." Sifo, who had been sitting stiffly, suddenly slumped into his chair. His face was pale, sweat glistening on his forehead. His hands shook slightly as he tried to comprehend the magnitude of what had just been said. For years, he had believed his secret was safe. Now, in front of his colleagues, friends, and extended family, that illusion was shattered. Thalani, sensing danger, quickly tried to deflect blame. "This is all Nandi's fault," she shouted, pointing at her sister-in-law. "She came here, made a scene, humiliated us in front of everyone." The guests' reaction was immediate. Some frowned, others shook their heads. Whispers turned into murmurs of disapproval. They didn't see Nandi as the problem, they saw her as a victim. Thalani's words fell flat, sharp but hollow, failing to mask the rising anger and disbelief around the table. Nandi remained calm, standing straight, her hands clasped gently in front of her. She didn't yell, she didn't defend herself. She let her silence speak louder than Thalani's desperate accusations. Every glare from the guests seemed to reinforce her quiet dignity. Mr. Radabe glanced around the room, his eyes landing on Nandi one last time before returning to Sifo and Thalani. "This evening has made one thing clear. The truth has a way of coming out. And when it does, it demands accountability." He paused, giving Sifo a look that sent shivers down the man's spine. Then, turning to Nandi, he said quietly but firmly, "Would you please step outside with me for a moment? There's something we need to discuss privately." Nandi felt a small flutter of hope and curiosity. She nodded politely, keeping her composure as the room seemed to hold its breath. She followed Mr. Radabe toward the door, leaving behind the stunned faces, the whispers, and the burning tension of a family and a room on the edge of chaos. As the door closed behind them, Nandi allowed herself a slow, quiet breath. The humiliation she had endured moments ago was fading, replaced by a sense that the tide had finally turned. For the first time that night, she wasn't just a guest at a dinner. She was someone about to reclaim the respect and recognition she had been denied for so long. Inside, Saifo remained slumped, realizing the consequences of his actions were about to catch up with him. Thalani's eyes darted nervously to the door, understanding, perhaps too late, that her control over the situation was gone. The room buzzed quietly now, not with gossip, but with anticipation. Something big was coming, something inevitable, and Nandi was ready. Once they were outside, the night air felt crisp and calm compared to the storm inside the house. Nandi took a deep breath, trying to steady her racing heart. Mr. Themba Radebe turned to face her, his expression softer now, a mix of respect and genuine concern. "Nandi," he began, his voice quiet but sincere, "I want to apologize for everything you went through tonight. You did not deserve that humiliation. None of it was your fault." Nandi felt a lump in her throat. Hearing those words, finally, from someone she respected, made her chest ache in both relief and emotion. She had spent years being ignored, overlooked, and even betrayed by the people she trusted most. And now, here was a man with power and influence acknowledging her value. Mr. Radebe continued, "We've been trying to find you for months. Your model, the one you created when you worked with us temporarily, has become the backbone of our operations. It's being used internationally now. The company has grown because of your work. And yet, for years, you didn't receive what you earned." Nandi's eyes widened. She had always known the model was important, but hearing that it had reached international levels and that her work had been crucial was almost overwhelming. Her fingers tightened around her bag, but she stayed composed. He took a step closer, lowering his voice even further, as if sharing a personal promise. "We want to make this right. I want to offer you a high-ranking position in the company, one that reflects your talent, your intelligence, and the work you've done. Along with this, a full compensation package for the bonus you were denied." For a moment, Nandi couldn't speak. Her mind raced. Years of being dismissed and undervalued suddenly seemed to reverse in an instant. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. Not just tears of joy, but tears of justice, of validation, of finally being seen. You're serious?" she asked, her voice shaky but clear. "I've never been more serious in my life," Mr. Radebe said, his eyes locking with her. "You earned every bit of this, Nandi, and you deserve recognition, not just tonight, but for the rest of your career." Nandi let a small smile escape. The years of quiet patience, of sacrifices, of supporting her brother without recognition, all of it had led to this moment. She could almost feel a weight lifting off her shoulders, a freedom she hadn't known she was missing. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but steady, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything yet," he replied warmly. "Just know that your talent, your integrity, and your hard work will finally be recognized. And that's just the beginning." Nandi inhaled deeply, letting the cool night air fill her lungs, and for the first time in years, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Power, respect, and the thrilling rush of justice finally delivered. Tonight, her life was changing forever. Nandi stepped back into the dining room, and this time, the air felt completely different. The confident, quiet woman who had been humiliated just moments ago now walked with her head held high. Her shoulders were straight, her eyes steady, and there was a new light in them, one of pride, strength, and quiet power. All eyes turned toward her as Mr. Themba Radebe rose from his chair. "Everyone," he said, his voice commanding attention, "I would like to officially introduce someone very important. This is Nandi Kalala, the brilliant mind behind the financial model that has transformed our company. She is now joining us as a senior executive, and her contributions will be recognized fully, not just today, but from this moment forward." A ripple of applause swept across the room. Guests clapped warmly, some standing, some whispering impressed comments to each other. People who had moments ago watched her being insulted now saw her in an entirely new light. Respect, admiration, awe. Saifo froze in his chair. His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He wanted to speak, to apologize, but the words wouldn't come. His confidence had crumbled, replaced by shame and disbelief. Thalani's expression collapsed completely. The smirk she had worn so easily disappeared. She sank lower into her chair, trying to shrink from the eyes of the guests who were now murmuring about karma and justice. No one looked at her with the same admiration they had moments ago. She had lost control, and the room knew it. Nandi moved a few steps closer to the table, standing tall. Her eyes met Saifo's, and she spoke clearly, firmly, but without anger. "Respect isn't something you steal," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "It's something you earn." Saifo's lips parted, and he opened his mouth to speak, but Nandi didn't wait for him to explain. She didn't need to argue or justify herself. Her silence carried the weight of all the years she had been patient, all the sacrifices she had made quietly, and all the integrity she had maintained while others tried to take advantage. The room was buzzing, but in a different way now. Conversations no longer whispered about scandal. They whispered about her brilliance, her dignity, and the poetic justice of the night. Nandi could feel the shift around her. The way people now looked at her with respect, even admiration. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. She had come hoping for family reconciliation, yes, but she had also come for justice. And now, she had both in the most elegant, powerful way possible. As the applause continued and Mr. Radebe nodded proudly beside her, Nandi realized something. Tonight wasn't just about one family dinner. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen from her and showing everyone, especially those who doubted her, that true respect could never be forced or taken. It had to be earned. And tonight, she had earned it completely. The day after the dinner, Nandi's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Word had spread fast, faster than she could have imagined. Her inbox was full of messages, her voicemail overflowing, and her social media notifications were lit up like fireworks. Everyone was talking about what had happened last night. Saifo had been suspended from his job pending a full investigation. The news circulated quickly among colleagues and friends, and even some distant relatives reached out, murmuring their shock and disbelief. People were finally realizing the truth about what Nandi had endured for years. The lies, the manipulation, and the stolen work. Thalani, of course, didn't stay quiet. Her messages appeared on Nandi's phone one after another. I'm sorry about last night. I hope we can talk. I didn't mean for things to go that far. Please forgive me. But Nandi didn't open a single one. She didn't reply. Not because she wanted to hurt Thalani, but because she had learned the hard way that some people could never be trusted. Some words were only empty noise, and Nandi had no time for them. Instead, her phone rang with calls from people who truly mattered. Extended family members who had previously sided with Thalani, now apologizing sincerely. We believed her lies, Nandi. We're so sorry, one aunt said, her voice trembling. Another cousin left a voicemail, admitting, we had no idea what was really going on. You've always been honest and kind. Nandi listened quietly, thanking them briefly, but not letting herself get pulled back into old dramas. She didn't need apologies to feel vindicated. Her life was moving forward, and that was enough. Her focus shifted entirely to her new role. The compensation and the high-ranking position weren't just rewards. They were a fresh start, a chance to prove to herself and the world that she belonged exactly where she was. Every day, she poured her energy into the company, into leading teams, solving problems, and making her ideas matter. Every success felt like a step further away from the humiliation she had endured and closer to the life she deserved. Even when she thought about Saifo and Thalani, she felt no anger, only a quiet satisfaction. The universe had a way of balancing things. They had made their choices, and she had made hers. She was done looking back. Instead, she invested her energy into growth, learning, and opportunities that truly recognized her worth. Friends and colleagues started noticing her brilliance, her leadership, and her calm, confident presence. Messages of admiration and support came from people who had been inspired by her story, some even from young women in Kenya who saw her as proof that perseverance and integrity could change a life. Nandi realized something important. She had survived humiliation, betrayal, and lies, and in the process, she had found something far greater than revenge. She had found her own power, her own respect, and her own freedom. And as she shut her laptop at the end of a long day, she smiled quietly to herself, knowing one thing for certain. She was never going back to the person who had doubted her, and she was never letting anyone take her dignity away again. This was her life now, her rules, her success, her future. And it was just beginning. Weeks later, Nandi's home was filled with warmth, laughter, and the scent of delicious food. The dining table was set beautifully, candles flickering softly, and around it sat the people who truly mattered. Her genuine friends, supportive colleagues, and her mother, whose pride and belief in her never wavered. It was a different kind of holiday dinner, one filled with love, respect, and joy instead of tension and betrayal. As the evening went on, Nandi shared stories and laughter with her guests, but she also quietly took a moment to give back. She announced a scholarship fund, using a portion of her compensation to help young girls in Kenya who dreamed of studying finance. She spoke softly but passionately about giving others the opportunities she had worked so hard for. Her friends and colleagues applauded, moved by her generosity and vision. When the night drew to a close, Nandi stood by the window, looking out at the city lights, feeling a deep sense of peace and accomplishment. She turned to her mother and whispered, smiling, "You know, when people shut the wrong door on you, life opens the right one loud." Her story didn't stay private for long. Soon, posts and articles about Nandi's courage, dignity, and success began circulating across East and Southern Africa. People shared her journey, how she had been humiliated, how she stood tall, and how she reclaimed her worth. Thousands were inspired by her resilience, and young women saw in her a role model for pursuing their dreams, standing up for themselves, and never giving up. That night wasn't just a holiday dinner. It was the start of a new tradition for Nandi, one where love, respect, and generosity took center stage. She had turned a painful past into a shining future, proving that even the harshest setbacks could open doors to incredible new beginnings.